So you want to play pro baseball. I'm about to be brutally honest with you. Most players say that they do, but their actions tell me otherwise. Before you start to chase that dream, make sure to listen to this. And before we get started, my name is Evan Mendoza. I played D1 baseball at NC State. I got drafted by the St. Louis Cardinals. I played with them for 6 years and I got traded over to the San Diego Padres, played with them for 1 year. I was in a World Baseball Classic representing Colombia, and now I help high school baseball players not only through the college recruiting process, but beyond. And what I'm about to tell you isn't meant to discourage you. It's meant to prepare you. Guys, I'm gonna be just straight up with you. Talent isn't enough nowadays. Like, you're just a good baseball player and that's enough. Like, that's not gonna cut it in today's highly competitive world, right? Because at the end of the day, like, there's so many high school baseball players that want to play college, so many college players that want to play pro, and you have to be realistic and understand that the percentages are never going to be in your favor. But that's where we also have to understand, what are we doing to separate ourselves from the rest of the competition? So at that college level, typically speaking, all of those guys on that roster were that guy in high school. They were the top player at their specific high school, and now they're becoming into a much smaller pool of really high quality talent. And if you think about professional baseball, it's an even smaller group of people that went, got drafted, went to the college of their choosing and got drafted. Now it's an even smaller tool of people that have actually produced at that specific college, at that specific university, and now they're actually getting at that professional level a chance to chase their dreams. Another thing a lot of people don't understand about pro baseball is you're gonna be tested a lot more off of the field than on the field. And what I mean by that is mostly because of the mentality that it takes to be able to play at such a high level. You can't expect to necessarily just play baseball and then your day's over with. There's obviously gonna be challenges throughout the way that you have to be prepared for. And those mental challenges come from 16-hour bus rides, 6 a.m. Plane rides that are not always fun. And playing baseball 6 days out of the week, and your travel day, your only off day out of the entire week is typically Mondays, right? So understanding that it's much more than just a game, it's very important to understand how we go about this off of the field. And these tests I'm telling you about is those 0 for 4 days where you go back home and you start to understand, like, wow, I'm really not feeling great. How am I gonna go about this preparation for the next day? Because the next day is coming whether you like it or not, and if you feel bad about yourself, so what? There's gonna be a game the next day, and how we produce and how we perform and how we basically get back to normal, that's what makes a pro, right? Real quick, if you have a son in 10th, 11th, or 12th grade who wants to play college baseball, listen up. At the Mendoza Baseball Academy, I built a triple play with the physical development, mental toughness, and a recruiting system that gets players noticed. And it's 100% remote, so no missed school, no wasted travel, just real results from home while your son works one-on-one with me. Click the link below to learn more and book a call with either myself or a team member today. So I always like to say, like, there's going to be dips and ups and downs in your journey. Every game you might not necessarily go 4 for 4, and that's to be expected, right? But how quickly, when we go down, can we get back up? That's what's the definition of a pro baseball player. Also, when you're playing pro baseball, no one owes you a single thing. Everyone is out for themselves. So if you're a hitter and you're facing a guy that's throwing 98 off the mound, he's not gonna give you a cookie because you had a bad day or you went 0 for 4 yesterday. So thinking about that is obviously really important, because there are going to be times where you don't feel good and you don't feel like the best as far as how you're going to put yourself out there and how you're going to be able to perform. But there are those times where you need to make sure that you have the ability to put one foot in front of the other, how simple it sounds, right? That's going to be the test that I'm telling you about, as far as doing it on a daily basis, playing baseball just about every single day, and making sure that we have the capabilities of going about that business in the right way. So this is where it's really important to understand, like, discipline is way more important than motivation. Guys, motivation will come and go. It's not the most important thing. Motivation, you can't expect to get motivated. That's just going to be something deep rooted in your bones as far as who you are, your passion, right? The motivation, guys, there's going to be waves of it, and I don't want you to rely on the motivation to do the work. I need you to rely more on the discipline that you've created from the day that you told yourself you were going to be a pro baseball player, or the day that you told yourself you were going to play in college. Guys, it all comes down to making a decision and And making that decision can be the best thing in your life, right? I want to make sure that you have that ability to be able to make that decision, understand what it's going to take, create that routine, and stay disciplined from the day you decide that. Whether it's in middle school or high school, for me, I remember having dreams about playing pro ball when I was like 4 or 5 years old. And I made that decision very early on, and I had fun playing baseball. There were times where I got burnt out. There was a time that I took a whole year off of baseball when I was around 11 years old because I wasn't having fun, right? So understanding that, like, yes, there's gonna be burnout if you're not having fun, if you're not going about it the right way. And that's something that I had to realize when I was pretty young. So thinking about that and thinking about how you stay disciplined in those times where you don't feel the best, that could happen when you're in high school, that can happen when you're in college, that can happen when you're in pro ball, right? So understanding discipline is way more important than staying motivated day in and day out. Now, if you are interested in learning directly with me, you can go ahead and apply and book an eligibility review down below in the description. From there, you'll learn a little bit more about my triple play system, how I work, who I am, and my background, and how I could potentially help either you or your player out. All right, so now I can actually give you some actual, very transparent advice, especially about pro ball, and especially the transition from high school to college to pro ball, because there were a couple of landscaping people around me, like literally watching me record, and I want to be able to be myself to you. That's what you guys came here for, and especially just like that very transparent advice about, you know, playing pro ball and the very limited opportunity that very few high school baseball players have, very few college players have, and to be able to play with an affiliated organization, guys. And that's something that I really also want to be able to touch on, is like there are so many different leagues and teams that refer to themselves as professional baseball. And to be fair, like, yes, professional baseball is any time that you're playing baseball and getting paid for it. Basically, that is my definition of professional baseball. And you can play professional baseball in Australia, in Europe, in you know, South America. You can play professional baseball in Mexico. You can play professional baseball in America. There's you know, leagues like a lot of people will probably learn to understand about indie ball, independent league, meaning they're independent from an affiliated organization like the St. Louis Cardinals or the San Diego Padres. So as far as the levels to it, I would say there are plenty of guys that came from affiliated ball over to indie ball. But I would just say that the level of competition is close to like that, you know, high A, maybe double A level of competition. That's what indie ball is, depending on the league, right? There's many different leagues. I think there's probably, at least to my knowledge, maybe 3 or 4 leagues that are indie ball, equivalent to maybe, let's say, you know, high A or double A. There's probably a handful more that are probably more like lower rookie ball, low A, maybe that range, right? Very few leagues out there are at the level of like a AAA, big leagues, maybe like a 4A. 4A referred to as like those guys that jump up and down between AAA and the big leagues. And leagues like that are going to be more like in Japan, in South Korea. There's some really good baseball over there. So thinking about, like, obviously the different leagues that are out there, there's tons of pro baseball, right? And I don't want to say this like, oh, it's easy to play pro baseball, because it's not, right? You have to be that less than 1%, that fraction of a 1%, if you really want to be able to play baseball at that next level. And that's something that I just wanted to make sure I was recording before I really dive deep with you guys. But like, yeah, pro baseball, it's not designed to, you know, to be easy. But for those people that have really devoted their entire life for it, it is something that I expected to happen, weirdly enough. Like, I expected to get drafted. I expected to land a college scholarship because of the work that I was putting in. Very important caveat, right? Like, I'm not gonna expect anything if I'm doing nothing. So always keep that in mind. If you're expecting things to happen, that means you've completely trusted the process. You've completely put that focus on your journey. Is not going to be an overnight success, because overnight success is, I think you guys have probably seen that graphic before. It's this really, really long period of nothing happen for like 10 years. And then all of a sudden at year 15, it's like, oh, overnight success, right? So that's what I want you guys to understand. These overnight successes, these players that have come out from the woodworks, it didn't happen by chance. It was years on years and years, compounding, and then all of a sudden it's like, wow, you turned into an absolute beast because of the work. It's not because of a overnight success. It's because of the compounding effect of the work that you've been putting in for the years. That's what made you the player that you are today. Another aspect that I think is a very unique story that I like to tell you guys is when I got drafted, by the St. Louis Cardinals. It was in the 11th round. I was picked 334 of the 2017 MLB first year player draft out of NC State. They said, pick number 334, round 11, the St. Louis Cardinals select right-handed pitcher Evan Mendoza. And I was like, hold up. I got so many calls. Did they just really draft you as a pitcher? Because I played, for a lot of people that don't know, I went into my freshman year at NC State, and in high school, a lot of people actually were considering me on some draft boards as a pitcher. I went to NC State as a two-way. My freshman year, I did pitch. It did not go well. I had like an 8 ERA, and then I made that transition to becoming a third baseman for my sophomore and junior year. Later got drafted as a third baseman, but they misspoke. So it just shows you, like, even at the highest level, when you think like teams like the St. Louis Cardinals and the MLB, like they have everything perfectly lined up and they don't make mistakes. Guys, everyone makes mistakes. Pro baseball players make mistakes. And I just wanted to tell you, like, my story of getting drafted. I was excited for about 5 hours, and then I continued out my day. I think we went to dinner, we went to the beach. I was in Sarasota, and the time that I woke up the next day, I was just like, all right, got to go to the gym, got to work out, got to keep pushing myself, because guess what? When I report that very first day, which for me, I reported in State College, Pennsylvania for the State College Spikes, I was surrounded by guys that were, let's just say, equal caliber to me, right? And now I'm on an even higher competitive field where, okay, how am I going to stand out? Is it going to be my work ethic that helps me stand out? It was kind of hard to do that, because when the Cardinals drafted me, it's the same philosophy, by the way, that I like to use inside my program, where I never want my students to feel overwhelmed from the get-go. So that's where we really segment out the very beginning stages to make sure that they don't feel like they're hitting a brick wall in the first couple of days of joining in. So that's the same approach that the Cardinals did. They didn't let us work out for the first 2 or 3 months. They had us on a very strict segmented plan, a lot of blood work, a lot of EKGs, a lot of mobility tests, because at the end of the day, they just acquired, it sounds so weird saying this about myself, but they just acquired an asset to their huge business, their huge organization. They want to see if this asset has any defects, right? Is my arm not flexible? Let's say if they did some mobility for internal, external rotation for my elbow, let's say like I didn't have any rotation. They'd be like, holy cow, how have you been throwing? We need to get you some PT. We need to get you some mobility exercises, because if you keep this up, what we've seen as far as our doctors, our training staff, our physical therapists, you're probably going to encounter an injury in the next couple of months if you keep this up, as far as the lack of mobility. So just giving you guys a weird little example, but they want to see all these movements from the get-go as you get drafted by any organization. I'd say any organization will take care of their players from the get-go, because they want to understand what kind of assets they've now had. They will continue doing that testing, though, probably every month, not necessarily to the extent of blood work and EKGs, but like every spring training, there would be a physical day where it was actually 2 days of getting all the work done. And there were so many stations. By the way, for all the organizations I played with, that's all I can tell, but very, very organized. And I would say the people that are organizing that, I want to give you guys like an applause, because spring training, when you're dealing with over like probably 300 staff members, coaching staff and player staff, and to be able to organize it in a systematic way where they each have stations, everyone has a check-off list. Typically you have a folder with a bunch of documents, your EKG numbers, your test results, all that is given to you. You get a sign-off from each station, and at the very end you basically check out and be like, okay, I did it. Oh, you didn't do this? Okay, you need to go do this. So it's a very, very systematic approach. It's actually something that I admire, because I love systems. I love staying efficient with everything. Yes, there were some bottlenecks, by the way. There was a little bit of waiting around. That's why it took 2 days. But if you think about 300 people getting an EKG, or 300 people doing a P sample, right, or a blood test, guys, these things will take time. But I'll never forget just like going through those processes, and especially for the first time getting drafted, and I was just like, wow, these guys take this serious, right? Like, we are now professionals, and we are treated like professionals by doing this extensive testing. And by the way, like, before getting drafted, I don't even know if I've ever done an EKG. Maybe when I was a very young baby, because I remember having like a heart murmur when I was like 2 months old. But other than that, I don't think I ever got an EKG. I don't really think I ever really did blood work, and I didn't really go through a mobility screening before. These were all things that were completely new to me, and I think by going through that process, I've developed out my triple play program, especially like the mobility modules, to make sure that my players understand how to maximize their body and maximize their potential for their rotational efficiency, whether it's pitching or throwing or hitting or, you know, being active out there on defense and making sure that you become an athlete through your body. These are the things that, if we're being honest, like most high school baseball players neglect. Most college baseball players even neglect, right? So how are we able to separate ourselves from that high school level and start doing things like a professional? That's something that I always took into consideration because I always wanted to become a professional. I always wanted to get drafted. I thought that was just like the coolest thing, and that's also what my I was destined for those things, right? Because of the work that I was putting in. Again, guys, there's so many parents out there that expect D1 scholarships out of their son. They expect their son to go pro, and that's where I think, in my opinion, it's the wrong way of going about it. But I want your son to feel like it's part of the process and it will happen, and have that utmost confidence in his ability, because that's what it takes to be able to be on a field with, you know, 17 other pro players is sometimes intimidating. Sometimes you have to self-reflect, look at yourself in the mirror. Do I really belong here? How did I get here? How am I playing with Albert Pujols? I'll never forget in spring training when I was with the Padres, I was sandwiched between, I think Tatis was on second. I pinch ran for, I don't remember exactly who, it might have been Xander Bogaerts. Pinch ran for him, so I was on first base, Tatis was on second, and Manny Machado was up at the plate. And I was like, holy cow, is this actually happening right now, right? So like there were times in pro ball where it was a very much so pinch me moment. Do I belong here? It also, guys, one thing that I think is really important, and it's the reason why I've included it inside my triple play, is like the mentality that we need to feel confident in those moments. And if anything, we need to use those moments to fuel us to keep that progression going, right? We can't be on a field with Manny Machado and Tatis and not know bunt defense. Or we don't, like, if we show up to spring training and not understand what the wheel play is, or cutoffs and reel, or cutoffs and relays, or caught offs, and how to do pickles and, you know, rundowns and all bunt defense, like all these things are essential at the professional level. And not only understanding one position, I told this to one of my students on an onboarding call the other day, is understanding how to visualize if you were put in a completely different position that you don't play. Because by the way, guys, that's what happened to me when I was with the Cardinals. I was in spring training. They told me to take ground balls at first, and I didn't understand bunt defense plays. I didn't understand my responsibilities for being a cutoff man. These were things that, like, I quickly, within a day, had to understand. And then by day 2, by day 3, it was somewhere in that range, because I remember it was quick. I was backing up Paul Goldschmidt at first base when he was with the St. Louis Cardinals, right? So like it came at me fast, but it also gave me opportunities by playing multiple positions, staying versatile, to play in front of the big league coaching staff. But again, it came with the caveat of, okay, let's see how this guy reacts to understanding some bunt D, some footwork at first base. Obviously, it's a little bit different than third base or shortstop or second, which is where I played a lot of in my pro career. But like that adaptability, that coachability, I think that's another thing that really will separate you from that high school level to the college level, and especially to that pro level, is how quickly are you able to learn. I always like to say, and some of my team members inside the Mendoza Baseball Academy, they've heard me say this before, but the intelligence, and I'll blanket this around baseball players, but the intelligence of a baseball player is how quickly you're able to retain and get information and make changes, right? Because if I tell you, for example, let's just say for a YouTube video, start off with saying, my name is Evan Mendoza, I played 7 years of pro baseball. And I tell you to start every single YouTube video saying that exact thing. And it takes you 10 videos to actually retain that information and gather that information and actually put it into action. It takes you 10 videos. I'd much rather work with someone that takes them not even a half a video. It's going to be the next video that gets published. It's going to move on and it's going to get inserted the right way without me having to repeat it, right? So that's the level of expectations that I have for my team members, but also for coaches and the coaching staff at professional levels. It's expected that you're able to make adjustments that quickly. Guys, it is a game of an adjustment, of adjustments, not just one adjustment, obviously, but like even when you're at the plate, making adjustments to different pitches and how the pitcher's throwing you. These are the things that need to be made quickly without mommy or daddy holding your hand, guys. That's something that I see way too often, is parents overloading their responsibility in this whole college recruiting process because maybe little Johnny isn't, taking that initiative. That's something that I teach inside for all my students, is not just like becoming the best baseball player and working on the physical working on the mental side, building out that recruiting plan, but really turning, players out there, high school, young men into professional young men that understand the responsibility and that accountability to take their game to the next level. That's something that I'm very passionate about. College commitments aside, throwing 90 miles an hour aside, hitting the ball 105 off the tee aside, I want to be able to develop my students into young men, obviously, with that understanding of what they're doing, what their purpose is, how to go about their business, reaching out to college coaches, staying professional, handshakes, these little things that make a long, lasting impression with college coaches. Great eye contact, the ability to communicate with someone. I think these are just like really, really great tools that nobody told me in this whole process of playing baseball for the past, I don't even know, 20 years. I started when I was 4. I encountered a couple of injuries, and I think I was 27 when I played my last game. So we're looking at probably like 24 years or something like that of playing baseball, failing, most importantly, guys. Whether you're at high school, whether you're at that college level, whether you're at that professional level, you're going to fail a lot, and that's going to be something that's expected out of you at the professional level. Yes, you're going to fail. I will forever remember those first couple of moments of watching Yadier Molina play and hit in spring training, and just realizing, like, man, he's just like me. He strikes out, he rolls over, he breaks his bat. He gets jammed, he hits cappers to the second baseman. These things happen to the best players in the entire world. So give yourself some slack when these things happen to you. Don't be super stressed on everything that you've got going on, because at the end of the day, guys, failure is part of the game, and I don't want you to get discouraged by understanding the numbers of, the lack of players from the high school level to get to the college level. I think last time I checked, there's over 400,000 high school baseball players specifically, and there's, I think, 34,000 that play college baseball at all levels. Right? Not just D1. D1 is even less than that. So I think it's like 7% of all high school baseball players play in college, and then even less, like 2% of all high school baseball players will play at that D1 level. So what are we doing to be able to confidently say that is part of my process, that is confidently part of my journey, and I will get to those stages because that is part of the routines that I'm building, the structure that I'm maintaining. These are the things that I'm really, really passionate about, not only for myself and my day-to-day, because of course I need to be disciplined. I need to stay, structured in the way that I go about my life, but also the way that you go about your baseball skills, your development, your mindset, your plan, your strategy, and the recruiting side. Guys, one thing that I'll leave you guys with is what I've learned in pro baseball and what I've learned in my life within baseball is there's so much of a side effect of what baseball has taught me and how I live my life, right? If you put in half of the effort in work as far as lifting or hitting off the tee or your bullpen and you're just doing things nonchalant, you are going to get half of the reward on the other side. And that goes for in life as well, right? There's nothing great that you will get without a level of sacrifice that it takes. And playing baseball in college, guys, it took a lot of a sacrifice. I remember I only went to one football game and I realized I hated it because I kept thinking to myself, someone else is out there in the gym getting better. And what I typically did Friday nights, especially in the fall, is I would do 2-a-days. I would love this aspect of competitiveness of, I know everyone else is out there watching football and I'm in the gym getting better at baseball, something that I truly care about and something that I want to happen. There are 2 quotes that I just recorded some Instagram reels the other day that I really want to share with you. And these things actually helped me a ton these quotes helped me a ton in my playing journey, not only in high school, in college, but also in pro ball. The first one is, do today what others won't, so tomorrow you can do what others can't. Very, very powerful because yes, I was able to play on fields that a lot of my high school teammates were just not able to step foot on. The other one is actually from one of my best friends in college. I think there was a point in time where I kept telling him, yeah, I'm going to try to do this. I'm going to try to do this. And he goes, hey, buddy, like, there is no try. You either do or you do not. So when you're a parent and you're telling me, yeah, we're going to try sending out some emails, are you doing it or are you not? It's very, in my mind, very binary. Are you doing the work or are you not? I'm trying to get on a program for a sports-specific baseball rotational program. Are you doing it or are you not? Right? So that's the type of energy I like to work with as far as the students, the families inside my triple play program, inside my Mendoza Baseball Academy. We're 100% remote. I focus on the physical, mental, and the recruiting. If that's something that interests either you or your son, go down below in the description. You can go ahead and apply to work with me. You can book an eligibility review, and from there we can kind of see if we're a mutual fit, and we can start rocking and rolling, getting the results that you've been looking for and hoping for. So without leaving you with any other quotes or final last words, I appreciate all your support here on social media. If you haven't already, make sure to DM us on Instagram. If you haven't heard from us, DM us on Instagram. Have a quick conversation with us. That's something that I think is very valuable, because I think a lot of people don't understand. Like, we read our DMs, we are very attentive to make sure that those conversations are to be had. So if you DM us the word college, we'll have a quick little conversation on where your son's at and if we're a potential good fit. And make sure to subscribe here on YouTube. That's something that we really like to see. If there's also any comments that you guys have, any questions about the recruiting process, you can drop them down below. I really just want to be able to put out this content for you guys to understand like what I see in baseball, because baseball is changing. Everyone's trying to do launch angles and home runs. I see it from a different lens, of course, through my 24 years of playing baseball on this earth. So I appreciate all the support. And again, if you are interested in working one-on-one with me, go down below in the description and apply to get that process started.